But this is the tech solutions that give your business the competitive edge webinar. That's a fancy title. Basically, this is how to use technology to work around all the crazy things that have happened since this pandemic started. We could look at it that way. So digital transformation used to happen because your CEO wanted to do it or because your computer's battery was dying and you had to fix that. So your CEO used to be the one responsible for this, CTO, Chief Technology Officer. But this year, I think we can all agree that COVID-19 has really been the driver of locking us down, getting us to stay in one place, make a lot of changes to our business that would have been really unthinkable not so long ago. A lot of things have changed, but here's what hasn't changed. Human experience for our customers, for our employees, the productivity of our team, how much our organization can adapt to change, and reducing risk are more important than ever. Leaders are struggling because there's a million solutions and a million tools and a million ways to get things done. Leaders are really struggling to align these changes that they're making to actually the outcomes that they're trying to get in their business. And every organization still deserves to be profitable and scalable and to still be able to grow, even though things have been so challenging lately. By the end of this talk, we're going to look at what you can do to get the most out of tech in your organization. I'm going to look at a framework that I put together with some colleagues, a digital maturity framework of how to understand the vision of where you're trying to get to, set a strategy, set a roadmap, and actually execute on that. There's a lot of materials that I can provide to you guys at the end of this webinar to have happier customers, lower risk, more productivity, and more growth. So maybe it's chaotic and reactive is where you felt lately. Let's try to get you to empowered and innovative because there's so many things that you can do with the right tools and the right process in place. My name is Josh Weiss. I run LA Creative Technologies. We secure and streamline creative and passion-driven organizations across architecture, nonprofit, music, and graphic design. I'm passionate about this because I see how people who are more digitally mature, who have more process, have more tools, and really understand what they're doing in these arenas, they fared better in COVID-19. We had some clients who really required no changes to deal with COVID and some people who had to redo their entire operations. I've been working on some concept of digital transformation since 2000. Used to work at a great used bookstore up in Berkeley called Moe's Books, and we were selling dusty used books on Amazon and eBay, which was how they were dealing with the fact that they had less foot traffic than they had 5 years before. And I helped a radio station back in 2005, an NPR affiliate nonprofit radio station. When podcasting, before it was a big business endeavor, this is just when everyone who had a little content needed to make a podcast a very complicated manual way before the iTunes store. So I've been doing this for a long time, helping people transform the way that they do what they do in their organizations. And I'm excited to empower leaders like you with the skills that you need to stay ahead of the curve because things are changing really, really fast. Let's look at the state of digital maturity in the year 2020. Atlassian, which is like one of the biggest 20 or 30 software companies out there in the world, they told all their employees to work from home forever, which is crazy, tens of thousands of employees. REI, they've been working on this great new headquarters in Seattle. They just put it on the market before anybody even moved in. So their entire concept of working has changed in a very short time. What REI has decided to do is to keep their employees working out of co-working spaces in smaller shared places. And because today we have 2 people involved in the music industry, which has really been some of the hardest hit ever in this pandemic, concerts have been canceled like crazy, right? I would say that South by Southwest was really when the US saw that this pandemic was going to hit us really hard and not just the rest of the world. Coachella, that was some of the biggest news that I was seeing as this whole thing started, really showing what a big change we were in for. Remote work is here. I don't think anyone can argue about that. I think 2 of our 3 guests today were working from home. Before this pandemic, less than 4% of people who could work from home were working from home, which is crazy. 44% of them weren't even allowed to do remote work at all. Natural disasters happened, people got sick, there was all kinds of states of emergencies happening, but COVID-19 is super unprecedented, like how much change. Like we've never seen this before, right? And one of the things that I'm here to say is that remote work is not just about working the exact same way that we work at the office, but working from home. It's really about using tactics and thinking differently. So companies have a lot of applications, right? This chart here is from a service called Blissfully. What they do is they help companies track how much they're spending on their applications and sort of what they're doing with apps in general. So this is for a simple under 50 employee company, spending an average of $22,000 a year on software, almost $1,400 per employee. Like the applications are so important to the functioning of these businesses. And this chart on the left is really interesting. It's showing us that let's just take an average of 16 people at the company. And on the right-hand side, we've got 40 applications. And all these connections, this is 16 different people interacting with up to 40 different software applications. And all the different connections that each person has to deal with to make that happen. So we have to train someone how to log into their email, how to log into their database, how to store files, how to move files. It's like it seems very simple. You have a small team and a small amount of applications, but it gets complicated really fast trying to align people with what they're trying to get done. And on the right-hand side, this was a crazy number. Within 2 years, almost 50% of the applications that people were using were switching. So people are getting new applications, learning how to use them, and then moving their stuff off of them and onto a new application. It's super nuts, just like how much is happening, how fast it's evolving. And of course, because we're moving off applications so fast, we're still paying for at least one application that we're not using in a business. And then beyond that, change is really hard. So we can see that 70% of the people who try to do a big digital shift in their organization fail. This is from Forbes, and this is probably dealing with much bigger organizations than any of our own. But the same thing holds true in the smallest organizations that I talk to, where they're failing for very specific reasons. 41% because the people who are doing the change or the people who are receiving the change, the employees, the volunteers, they don't have skills or sufficient training. Then we have 30% where the employees are just like, I don't want to do this, right? My employees are pushing back. I don't want to use this new application. I don't want to do this. If I'm working from home, that's fine, but don't change the way I work, right? It's really like a human cultural issue. And then we have the issue of a lack of a leadership or vision, right? When we have to make these really, really big changes in our organization, it requires leadership. It requires vision. It really requires putting together the right plan and really showing people where we are now, where we're trying to get to, and why you actually want to work hard on making this change happen. So that's like some really, really large scale concepts about what we're talking about, but diving in on a really tactical level, what is digital transformation? If you're a huge enterprise, if you're an Adobe or if you're a Microsoft, digital transformation is going to be very high level, trying to change the way that tens of thousands of customers interact with you. But let's just look at our everyday lives. So all of us have seen over the last 5 or 6 years that we've moved from cash registers to iPads, right? We're taking payments on iPads. And I think we all got pretty used to that. But what I see as a really interesting evolution of that is that since COVID hit, now I'm seeing where the clerk will be on one side of the room and we'll be on the other side. Or just yesterday, I had someone hand me the entire credit card processing machine to do the transaction myself. That's the digital transformation of the way that we make payments. Team meetings on Zoom and Slack. We all used to be in the same room together for our meetings. Now we're meeting online with video, right? And we have to try to maintain our company culture throughout all of that. We've got DJ sets on Twitch. This isn't something you'd see in most digital transformation talks, but a lot of the people here are involved in the music industry, and I've seen a lot of my friends have to take their creative output, move it from streaming at an event And now they're on a channel on Twitch, which is crazy. Remote whiteboard collaboration. We have a representative on our panel from the architecture industry. We're seeing people open up Teams chats and they've got a whiteboard now, right? So we can actually sketch out what we're trying to get done. And we can, it's one more way of sort of interacting like we're in the same room when we're not. COVID contact tracing. This one is interesting because we need data to make decisions about COVID. And whatever all of our personal feelings are about the privacy implications of people knowing who we've been around and sort of where we've been, which is a whole other webinar topic that we could cover. What I find interesting is that Apple and Android are building it into their phones, that if we enable it, these databases can have an anonymized way of knowing where we've been and who we've been around to prevent the spread. And really what that gives us is data about where people are getting infected to allow us to make decisions. Whereas right now we're making decisions on a much larger, broader scale that make it very difficult to sort of refine our decisions down by neighborhood, down by city. We're doing everything by county. It's not working very well. Outsource marketing execution. I use a service called Upwork that has all kind of contractors from all over the world. When I got this PowerPoint deck designed, I have a great designer who's in Egypt. We've been working together for years, and we interact on Upwork. It's an entire platform where you can go find people to help you get done what you need to get done. And then finally, working from home is itself a digital transformation. You were required to be at a desk. Your files were stored in an office. We only communicated verbally, and the whole thing has really been turned on its head and kind of transformed digitally as a result of, you know, the technology for years. And then now, boom, we have COVID, people are working from home. It's a major change. So that shows us where organizations have sort of been since this pandemic started. We've been talking about why it's hard to make these type of changes in an organization, no matter how small it is, because it requires vision and it really just requires the right skills to make it happen. We are then looking at how do we measure where an organization is at with digital maturity? Like at this point, all of us have our email online. At this point, there's some basic things that most of us are doing, but there's an entire framework that we're going to get into on the next couple slides. But what I want to show here is that we've come up with a way to measure where your organization is at from a risk perspective, or from a process perspective, or from how we're dealing with the people in our organization. And by doing this, we can see where we are now, and then in purple, and then in orange as the example for process and for people. We're able to see where we want to get to. We don't want to fix everything, but maybe we just want to get a little more efficient with our process, and we want to train our people a little better so we can collaborate better. This is the model that we came up with and that I've been working off of in my own business for quite some time, where we've got in the middle, we've got a strategy for our transformation, essentially looking at our vision and then our tactical roadmap of what we want to get done, and then looking at these 6 components of the business or the organization that go around it. So the cultural impact of our technology, how efficient are we operating? What are the platforms that we're using, be they social media platforms, be they outsourcing platforms, but how are we leveraging these pre-built platforms to get more done? From a risk perspective, we've got anything from cybersecurity to the reliability of our computers, and on the information side, where is our information stored? Everything that our employees use in their day-to-day time at work. And then also, what's the data that we're able to pull out? Can we see how people are working? Do we have a good understanding of our finances? And on the application side, how do we choose applications? How do we implement them? How do we make sure that people are actually using them? And so we take all that and we're able to come into a process, and it really doesn't matter how small your organization is. You could have 5 or 10 people, or you could have 1,000. And this thing is all pretty kind of standard across the board, works pretty well. We take our corporate strategy of who are we, what are our mission and values? Are we out there trying to inspire people? Are we building buildings? Is this really about making profit for a couple owners, or is this about sort of broader systemic change? But what are we trying to accomplish in general, right? We take that and we take a vision that we'd like to use these changes in our organization so that we can reach 10,000 more people with the content that we're making, or so that we can get in front of the right prospects to bring prosperity to our business, build more beautiful spaces, whatever it is. We want to come up with a vision, and then we look at those 6 components that we have and really align that to, if I need to understand my finances better, which is, I think, one of the things people understand best about data and information in a business, is go and clean up your profit and loss statement. So you know the buckets, you know where the money goes. You can start to cut expenses. Or if you want to look at how your team is performing on your projects, you have them follow a better project during their projects so you can see what they're getting done, right? So we're going to align the vision to the strategy map of how we're getting things done. Then we make a roadmap. When are we going to get what done? And then finally, we're just going to keep getting it done, right? You're going to meet week after week after week. You're going to talk to your team about getting stuff done. And at the end of the day, you're going to get your outcomes. You're going to have your business outcomes that are going to show you, people are happier, people are getting more done. Your organization was able to grow. Your viewing, your stats went up with what you're doing. But at the end of the day, this is what we're looking at today. Digital maturity, what it means, what the challenges are, and how you can understand this in a very tactical way so that you can get it done right the first time. So as far as the digital transformation strategy, we've really looked at that vision already and how it ties into your organization. But where we look at next is the priorities, which is essentially what's wrong now. There's a great business book by Mike Calloway. It's called Fix This Next, right? Because organizational leaders of all kinds, they have so many conflicting priorities, but what do you want to fix right now in your organization? And that's where we're going to set our priorities, right? So if data is the most important thing, you have to clean up the way people work so that then in 3 months or 6 months, you have a better understanding from the data because they've all been working in a consistent way. How are you going to get things done? Who in your organization is going to be responsible for making these changes happen? All this stuff is really important to your strategy and ties back in to the framework that we're looking at here. And so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go through a really quick round of what's involved in these 6 parts of the model. And then we're going to have our guests come on and work on the panel discussion with us. So starting with people is in a lot of ways my favorite part of this conversation, because we're not just here talking about bits and bytes and bleeps and bloops. We're really talking about tools, process, information, which is consumed by people, which is used by people on a daily basis, and especially in the types of industries that everyone here is involved in. This stuff is really important. So how are we collaborating with people, especially the fact that we're not in the same room anymore? As far as personal productivity, something that I myself struggle with, and I see most employees that I know at most companies struggling with, what are your priorities for the day? What are you going to get done during this day? And how are you going to get it done fast? How are you going to get trained, right? We have the aspect of remote work and sort of how is your workspace designed? How are your employees working? How much are they getting bothered, right? And all of this really tunes into the humanism and the culture of an organization, especially when we're not together in the same place anymore. We have to create a culture that really still keeps our values, even though we're involving technology in the mix. That is the super high level on people. Coming into processes, something that I see a lot in big businesses and small businesses is that everyone does something differently. So when we're going to post on social media, if we don't have a really, really dialed in process for what that looks like, one person is posting manually, one person is posting through one of the automation tools, everyone is using different graphics. We really need to dial down our process so that the person in charge doesn't have to do it every time, but we can really leverage delegation. On the project management side, whether you're using a tool like Asana or Trello or one of the many, many, many workflow managers that you can come up with, by leveraging our project management tool and our project management process, we know who's doing what when, and we have a way to understand why things go wrong. And once we get all the tools in place, then we get an opportunity to actually integrate and automate things. A little bit more than we have time for talking about today, but by dialing in your process, then you start to be able to automate things and not do manual repetitive tasks yourself all the time. On the platform side, social media is huge. We have 2 organizations here involved in throwing events. Really, event throwing for the last 10 years has been an online thing, right? We create Facebook events for events. We invite people to them. We promote them on social media. There's a lot of businesses that literally don't exist without social media. On the e-commerce and donor management side, even if you're a service-based business, you might sell a book, you might sell consulting, you might sort of offer some way that people can get to know who you are before you actually engage with them. There's so many ways people are using e-commerce, and on the donor management side, we have nonprofits on our panel. We really need a way to track who our donors are, to help engage them, have them stay part of our organization. Outsourcing services, just like I spoke about with Upwork. There's so many platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and ways that we can find people to help us with design work, with execution work, whatever it is that we do, we can use these platforms to find the people to help us in our businesses. Risk-wise, anyone who knows me hears me talk about this a lot, but on the policy and compliance side is what do we need to do to keep our stakeholders safe, to keep our employees safe, to keep our donors safe, right? From a very, very high level. And then on the cybersecurity side, we tackle that tactically. How do we make sure people are educated about the risks? How do we keep their computers and their email safe? And on the IT infrastructure side, it's really just about making sure people are using the right equipment. And it's not too slow to get their work done. I find that it's sort of like the most boring part of this whole thing, and it's the most standard day-to-day IT part, but it's actually very, very important. Information and data, right, is like, can we run the analytics on our data so that we know what's happening? And this can look like a million things. This can look like how fast people are getting their work done. This can look like showing people the engagement if we're doing online events, right? Showing people the engagement week after week to see when we try different things, what happens with it. And on the information management, how do I share with people the right information with the right people in our company? So if we're bringing in outside contractors, we can share just what they need, and so that the people in our business who need to know everything, it's organized and it's stored in the right place. And finally, applications, which could be an entire presentation in itself. Applications is crazy, right? If your average business under 50 people has 40 applications, right? Those all have to be the right applications, because what we see a lot is someone notices in a sales pitch that there's some application that can help them solve a problem. They just go ahead and sign up for it and buy it, and they don't even care. We really need to have a process to say, do we even have a problem? Which process, which problem are we trying to solve? And then once we've chosen it, how are we going to implement it? So maybe just a few people are using it at first, and then more people are going to use it, and then more people over time. We need a process for how it gets installed technically, and for how we're going to train everyone in an organization how to use this thing. And then finally, how are we going to manage it? How are we going to keep it up to date? How are we going to make sure people continue to use it over time? How are we going to make sure we're not paying too much for it? So applications, just because they're so easy to buy and because they're so easy to put in place, I find people really can be very irresponsible with the way that they put their applications in place. And so for us personally, I see, like, we work in the IT industry. There's a lot of tools that are designed just for our industry. It's going to be the same in the architecture industry, right? We have our standard tools like AutoCAD and Revit and SketchUp, for example. But then you have a lot of really micro niche tools for managing your projects better. Like, the list goes on and on and on. And so it's so important for us, on the one hand, to be out there and know what's available to make our jobs easier, but then at the same time to have a process to prevent this sort of like, I'll just buy another tool and that's going to make everything easier, right? Because we can end up spending too much, wasting a lot of time, and then this is where that employee pushback comes in. If our employees are going to say, hey, you already gave us this tool, like, you know, we tried one last week and it didn't work, and now you want us to try another one. It's really about bringing a little bit more sort of rigor and discipline before we just randomly buy new things and throw them out there. So that was like the 5-minute version of our model and how this all works together. We could go a lot more in depth into each of these, but I think it's a lot more interesting to hear from our panelists in a minute about how some of this lands for them. But this is our framework for getting from chaotic and reactive to empowered and innovative using technology. For anyone who's interested, I'm happy to go through that process with you. It takes about an hour, and we can really talk about where your strengths and your weaknesses are in these 6-7 areas. And one of the things we're working on is creating a benchmark, because we're really curious to see how are various architecture firms performing, how are various creative nonprofits performing. We've been putting this together so we have a way of seeing where each industry is at and coming up with solutions that can really help in these endeavors. Wow, here they are. They're all muted right now.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Azul.
Hi.
Hey, guys. So we have representatives from 3 really interesting organizations. I want to go ahead and allow the 3 of you to introduce yourselves. And why don't we start with Danny, who is muted.
Sure. Oh, hi. Hey, everybody. My name is Danny Stone. I am on the user experience and design team at Access Ticketing under AEG, which they are known for events like Coachella. I lead consumer research and everything from digital design strategy throughout product management for all our consumer and B2B products. Some venues that we ticket that you might know of are Staples Center, El Rey, the Fonda, Red Rocks, and the O2 in London, which working there has been such an interesting perspective going through the pandemic.
Wow, that's crazy. We're going to go to Azul next.
Azul, it's all yours.
Oh, me. Hi. I didn't hear you, Josh. Sorry. My name is Azul Amaral. I am the creative director presently for Grand Performances in downtown Los Angeles at the California Plaza. Grand Performances is about over 30 years of live performances, presenting live performances from local to international acts. As well as being actually kind of one of the first leaders in downtown Los Angeles of doing events. Before that, I was working as the program director of Grand Park in downtown Los Angeles since 2016 to 2019. Once again, another huge space doing outdoor events and booking, artists and people from around the world to come and perform.
Wow, such a wild perspective in the pandemic. And I guess that leaves you, Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam Kettle. I'm the design technologist for Nadel Architects. We are a 47-year-old LA-based architecture firm that does a lot of residential, retail, and other commercial work with some institutional as well. I'm responsible for exactly what Josh is talking about. I take the software and I set up training and implementation to really bring it into the process of people's daily work, starting with Revit, but then any other software that we're looking at or any other process that might increase our time of performance on projects.
That's awesome. Thank you guys all so much for being here. And I think the first question, and I'll just kind of toss it out to whoever wants to answer it first, is how has your sort of day-to-day work changed as a result of the pandemic? And that could look like, how has it changed for you to go to work in the morning, or how has the work that your organization itself done changed?
I'll start. My work, I mean, personally, as doing booking and doing that and I'm online a lot regardless, and that's a lot of like exterior work. But since COVID, of course, the contact with team members and, how we meet and how we talk and discuss, and I think we're all taking part of that. And I don't live far from the office, so it's easy for me to get to the office, but not going to the office has been definitely a change too. And I mean, everyone else has to deal with their in-home experience. And those have been really the changes. I mean, there's no contact, which is difficult, which speaks to a lot of things you were talking about how people work and how we get along, how we get things done. There's a lot of, how do you say, motivation through physical contact. And when you are here on a screen or on the phone, a lot of that gets lost as soon as you hang up. So it's been a lot of challenges there.
Yeah. And now what about for you, Sam? You said you guys are actually back in the office now?
So there's been a lot of changes and there hasn't been a lot of changes. We have no clients. There's no client or consultant interaction at all, which is just like that personal interaction of architects with everybody that we work with, our teammates, everybody else. That's pretty much just gone. So that's been a huge impact. In terms of our studio itself, the motivation, the ability to produce projects led them to kind of more looking for an innovative way to work on the office space to make it a place that people could be. So we are, as of yesterday, 100% back in the office, and it's a very different place to be. We're all in masks 100% of the time. I have to be in like an enclosed bubble to not be in it. And we are socially distanced. We have markers everywhere walking around. People's desks have been moved around. And then for me, I've moved to actually being more distant. I no longer do trainings in the workspace. I no longer take over conference rooms. I do it all via Zoom. And then we got headsets for everybody. So any kind of training, I moved from being like, sort of standing in front of everybody and using a lot of hand gestures to being more like this, where I'm in your ear, and we use the Teams so that you can see both my cursor for that interactive platform, and you get me like a head operative in your head. Move the cursor to the left and you'll find everything that you need kind of interaction, which is useful and very efficient, but very different than what we used to do.
Do you think that people are still able to like retain what they learn? Like, do you think that they've missed out? Has it become better in some ways? That's a Sam.
I'm not sure about the retention because it is really like I try to do just like when you're teaching. Like I also teach Revit at Santa Monica College, and you try and maintain a hands-off mouse. So when you're training somebody, you don't take the mouse from them if they're a kinesthetic learner, or you show it to them on the screen and then give them the moment to work on it themselves. And so I do keep that mentality, even though you can see my mouse on your screen. I won't move it. I'll give you the opportunity to find it. I think that's an important part of just the instruction process. But there are sometimes when I want to show you something that I do say, hey, you take your hands off the mouse, I'm going to walk you through the process, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity on your own computer, like you do, Josh, where I'm remoting in. So I'll show you the whole process either with my screen or with yours, and then you'll get a chance to do it on your own after.
That makes sense. Now, Danny, we skipped you. I think what I want to do is sort of give the next question to Azul and Danny. You guys work in an industry which has just been changed in ways that we don't understand at all yet. So I guess first with Danny, I mean, I know you do a lot of work in the music industry in general, and you've worked for a ticketing organization. Do you have any ideas where this is going? Do you have any sort of dreams or thoughts about what might happen next, or how people are kind of using technology to keep doing what they're doing, at least in the short term? You're muted.
Yeah, kind of like I was saying before, it's been such an interesting perspective to experience this pandemic at a company that relies on digital tools to service fans at mass music and sporting events. Especially being under AEG, we have venues globally. So where I work is I work more on the tech arm of the company. So I'm, very used to this like remote and digital mentality. In fact, I feel like I've been ready for this moment since like the first day I got my computer when I was like 10 years old. Like this, I mean, besides like the whole deadly virus thing, aside from that, this is like a really good moment for people um, to kind of embrace working remotely and to embrace figuring out ways to work better with your coworkers and to focus on process.
That makes sense. And then what about you, Azul? I know you guys you kept your summer season going, even though it got canceled right before it started in a certain sense. Like can you talk about what you've done to keep the season going?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very much like Danny that I was kind of ready, even though I'm a little bit older than Danny. But I totally, I've worked with Danny before, and I respect her vision and ideas about this situation. And I feel like I was also ready because I had been one of those people in my circle of peers coming from analog mentality, let's say, on event and how to promote events and do stuff like that, but was always interested in creating content and being able to have another platform that would actually speak to what we do well and in general. So coming to ground performances early in the end of last year and speaking to that idea was something that was actually put on my plate to work towards and rebrand and make sure that we were interacting with new people and building new audiences and building an online platform. Little did I know 3 months later, 4 months later, that would be my only outlet, and I would have to, let's say, slice the heavy online cake with trying to get through to people where we didn't really have, I would say, the best infrastructure for that to happen. And I made a quick pivot and really, I wouldn't say not knowing what I was doing, but just being, listening to my intuition about, well, there's no reason to stop. We just need to really dig into the things we should have been doing regularly, or all people should be doing regularly, and find that, the real secret is providing the interaction and the engagement with the content that is authentic to our brand. And that's something that I transformed and tried to do and completely did. And, thankful to the COVID, some people I wasn't able to work with who would be really busy at their regular jobs or out on tour or doing things, they suddenly became available to me. And I was able to utilize that, as I still am. And I think that's been important. And it's been easy for me. I can't say that's been easy for the rest of my administrative staff or people like that who are still kind of trying to catch up to really what this means. And I don't even claim to know, I know what it means. I know that I don't want to stop programming. I know that people are not going to stop listening or watching or listening to what we have to do. So that's something I'm here to provide and do the best I can.
And just to sort of be clear, you guys have used social media platforms to promote your events, and also you've been sort of throwing concerts and streaming sort of music online, right? On Facebook Live, on YouTube.
Pre-recorded presentations where we go and sit with a band. We did Mia Doi Todd, we did Jungle Fire. We're presently working on 3 other productions at the moment, as well as just stepping right into the online social media presentation aspect with Instagram and Facebook, and really connecting and really, honestly, connecting in our community internationally and nationally about, hey, I know you're at home or you're someplace else. Let's do this hour presentation. It's totally different. It's undocumented. It's a whole new way of doing it, but it's not much different from what we already do. And like I said, it's important to continue the engagement with people now when there is more to dig through. But, continuing to be authentic in what it is will, I think, hopefully is the change you're trying to make regardless. So now is like the biggest testing ground ever. And I feel like I was up to it. I feel like, I don't know if who else was at Grand Performance before I got there, if they would make the leap like I did, only because this is something I believe in before it had to be my everyday belief in.
So it's about essentially having the vision. And I guess I want to ask you, Sam, I have a question based on your work. How is like you talked about the changes in your day-to-day with training, but how is the actual process and job of designing buildings changing in the light of this pandemic?
Oh, that has been very interesting because it's we have a new branch that does interiors, and so and especially like the retail division, the reconceptualizing of what a gathering space is has just become this completely new venture. So there are certain retail that's doing fantastic in this, right? A grocery store, those are, we absolutely need them. Any kind of drive-through or walk-up service, anywhere with an outdoor patio, those are just becoming like, food service isn't going away. And then other stuff like even the way grocery stores are laid out, like one of the projects that we have going on, they're looking at not having the big hot bar. So how does that affect, how much takeout, how much pickup? Can they add in the window? Are they doing the bar component? Are they not? They're all these major brands are rethinking how everything is going to work. Office space is kind of like, what do you do with a great office space? You're talking about these smaller spaces. The large open plan is kind of like just got decimated completely, right? And then
watch that whole thing take off and then crash and burn.
Schools, right? The way that schooling's done, but there's actually been another kind of pushback on architecture where a lot of these projects are still happening. Hospitality has taken a huge hit right now, and a lot of the projects are still going on because there is this idea of stepping back, because architecture isn't a 6-month process, right? You're not looking at what's your output for tomorrow, a month from now. Some interiors have that, but a larger building, you're looking at what's my output in 2024, 2025, right? So a lot of people and a lot of companies and a lot of the development, they are under the assumption that this is something that we are going to beat, that this is something that we will move through and past, and that the future is going to look different, but a lot more like the present. And so under that assumption that, these larger projects are actually, they're all still moving forward. Big malls are still moving forward, schools are still moving forward, and buildings, housing is going to change. The units are going to look a little different. People are going to want more interior space now because they're not going to be outside as much. So, you look around at the walls like around you right now and you're like, I wish I was in a little bit of a bigger place. And with the way that rents are coming down and the way that rents are being affected and, retail spaces being affected, like it looks like it's going to shift, but people still need places to live. Buildings are still going to get built. So it's trying to pinpoint where the new normal is going to land, which is fun. But but you're looking at where's the new normal projected out over time.
So we all just pulling out our crystal balls and trying to figure out what happens next. So tell me this, Danny. I think. Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I relate with Sam and Azul on like how abrupt this change has been, and for us internally, we had a roadmap, and then on March 13th they told everybody to take their computers home because we might be home for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
yeah. But I was planning a wedding at that time, so we were super aware of what was going on. So I knew it was going to be kind of for the long haul. But project-wise, I feel like it's kind of gone through phases. Like that chaotic phase that you kind of brought up in your presentation, Josh. I experienced that up front because we were having to pivot our roadmap and the projects we were on. All of a sudden, refunds became, very important. Our response to our fans became very important, especially being a business where people are investing in events that are in the future. We needed to make sure like all our communication was really clear. We needed to make sure we were taking care of our fans, and that we were, being responsible and handling canceling all of our events like across the globe, really. So that was something that was kind of going on on a bigger scale project wise. But I feel like internally, I love the idea of remote work. I was introduced to remote work a couple of organizations back, and they called it ROW. And what ROW is a results only work environment. So the idea is that that you are paid, or that it pays its employees based on the efficiency, not the hours behind the desk, which I think is just like such an amazing concept, because I feel like sometimes it's difficult for companies to embrace this change because they have, there may be, it kind of all comes down to control. They want like a certain type of control over their employees. But I think that this experience, if you want to embrace it, taking ownership is like really important, taking initiative with communication. There's different types of people with different types of skill sets and different types of talents. Some might, love to speak, some might not like to speak. So it's kind of going the extra mile and figuring out how to communicate with your team. And digital tools for sure have been instrumental in like navigating this. I know you brought up digital whiteboards. Digital whiteboards is like something that I've been using a lot. It's a way that we can kind of continue the in-person collaboration and kind of like, just keep the conversation going, to drop it off and pick it back up. The cloud has been like super, super helpful in this time, especially with programs like Figma. All my design programs I've been doing are cloud-based. So now people can kind of come in and contribute in real time. You don't have to like wait for someone to send a file anymore. You can just hop in.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It's amazing how those things allow us to be a little more connected. Now, Sam, have you guys changed your tools at all, or during the time that you guys were working remotely, was there anything that evolved, not in sort of the end outcome of the projects, but in the way that your designers work?
Oh, that we haven't even gotten to so there's physical hardware requirements, right? So all of our conference rooms weren't fully, every conference room we had wasn't fully equipped with webcams. So now immediately there's a technology and stuff like I looked at and got implemented that every desk had a headset. So make something so that people can have that communication really when you're physically distant it's like speed of performance of your hardware, and then communication in between everybody. So there's been physical stuff, making sure that people had monitor setups, the remote connections, all of like the actual backbone. I looked at, and just like in your presentation, it was like, what's the thing that we need to change first? Ironing out the backbone, making sure that worked, then making sure there was hardware involved. And then the whiteboard effect was really where, including like, there's Zoom and there's Slack and there's Discord and there's everything like fell on Microsoft Teams, because it's the platform that has the interactive whiteboard feature. So odd things become what's going to be the one that actually people can do, and then using Bluebeam as an online version to host files so that people could do markups. That solves a big problem that we have in the office in general, which is two different project managers giving the drafting staff different comments, right? So that, like, putting stuff on the cloud so that the whole team would have that connectivity, and then incorporating communication that was also the kind of global level.
It's amazing how across so many different industries, like all of these solutions are so similar. We're all just trying to approximate the in-person human experience. So speaking of human experience, what drives you guys most crazy about this new digital world? And like, yeah, about the things that have changed. I'm gonna give that one to Azul to start.
Well, I just want to start because Danny tapped on something very important, and it's something that's going to make everyone more successful. And I think it's something that we need to re-examine as a culturally in how we do business. I mean, Danny's correct about, I've had a lot of experience as a freelancer, a lot of experience working in corporate structures, from arts to film and so on. And another reason why I feel very prepared for this is actually my self-awareness of being a freelancer, being able to be efficient in doing work without having to go into an office or having to report to my executive director or having to report upon what I'm doing and explaining so they can understand the steps it takes. And I think that's something that's going to change our culture completely. And especially in the arts and entertainment field where there are a lot of freelancers out there doing things. And that's something I've been able to pull on Power now to be able to utilize. Like, hey, all my freelance guys, let's go. And you understand that I don't have to look at a deadline on a calendar and talk towards it. And this is like, I need this done when this needs to get done. But that also, I'm pulling back and looking at myself in a structured situation also causes a little conflict because people don't understand the self-reliance of working remote and being able to handle 20 different things without them being bullet pointed, told in an email, like, hey, this is what we have to do. So it's super important about reestablishing the structure now, especially as, you know, we could talk about, we don't know what's, I can talk about, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know that this is not going to change in how we interact in the future. So being our strong suits here are really going to allow for people to be able to, however, to be more creative in what they do. And that's something that comes from a creative perspective. You know, I've talked a lot to my staff who are administrators, not necessarily creatives, and explain to them that the actual creative mind state that we're experiencing in this moment about the infrastructure in one way falling apart or how we do things is something that creatives deal with on the daily. Is something that they have to, you have to be creative to be creative. And if you understand the pairing of business and creativity, which is rare, you know, you are going to be successful in this time. And you will be successful in the old time. And it's something that made people successful before, because they could understand the dual personality that needs to be exposed to work correctly. Not correctly, but work more efficiently. That's something I like saying, that I think the artists are really set up in this moment to go to the next level, to go to the next step and create their own platforms for what they want to do and how they want to get it done and get paid and all that kind of stuff. The things that annoy me, the things that annoy me about what's happened,
Hold on one second. If I can paraphrase what you just said, one of the things that annoys you is that you have the ability to do all this work. The way you work has been opened up, but you're still held back in some way by sort of like the traditional structures.
Yeah, it's the, you know, look, 2020, everyone's like, I hate it. But 2020 has opened the door to remove the things that were not working. Yeah, I hate it too. But it's about facing the reality. And this is something that when you, whatever business, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're on a team, if you're a sport, whatever you do, you have to take on challenges head on.
Yeah.
You can't be afraid of what's coming next. And a lot of these infrastructures are built on fear about losing their hold. Lose the hold. There is no hold. You didn't have a hold. This is what 2020 said. There was no hold. You were just occupying spaces. You were just, you know, going to work. It can happen. And now it's over. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do? Step up or sit down.
I totally agree with that, Azul. I feel like if you're going to get left behind if you don't kind of like embrace the times. Two words that I relate with you on that I've been kind of putting in my head often are, one is patience, because everybody's in a different place. They're in a different place from like a technical standpoint. They now have distractions with families and homes. Like right now, my apartment is a DJ studio, a workout studio, it's 2 offices, and it's like a really tiny space. So it's kind of dealing with these new distractions and understand that we're all dealing with this and we're all going through this together. So on the flip side, like the solidarity part of that has been like really helpful, and like team bonding. And another word that I've been thinking about a lot lately is empathy. You know, having empathy for like your coworkers and what's going on and the situation we're in. We're not robots, right? So I feel like when you bring up digital maturity, to me, it's about committing to your team and getting feedback often. What's working, what's not working, what are the points of friction, how can we fix this? And moving forward, like Azul was saying.
Yeah. And so
Work for me, Danny.
well, and so if for Azul, what was driving him crazy is that he's working in this new way that people don't get. Where do you leave yours? You know, what is it here? Is it like, do you see a lack of empathy? Like, is that why you're thinking of it? These other people don't have it, or how do you?
I mean, I probably shouldn't say this on the record, but like one of the hard things about working in a company that's like, you know, global and massive is that sometimes I feel like they're moving a little bit slow. You know, like very early on, I kept hearing like, you know, we were reacting to a lot of things, and then I was just hearing a lot about like when things get back to normal, and kind of like what Azul is saying, like if we wait for things to get back to normal, we're going to get left behind. And you know, I wish that, you know, I could have a little bit more control on how to kind of use this time in like an innovative way to you know, reimagine the business model, but you know, that's a little bit above my pay grade. But yeah, I go ahead.
Yeah, no, so that might be a smaller company. But then I guess
I'm just going to add on to what you said, Danny, and the words that you brought up are correct. And as a person, and this is just me and Dan, I'm just trying to talk to Danny real quick. As a person who thinks, and I believe we're similar in our ways of how we think, you know, about being left behind, about feeling like you know, we're struggling because we understand kind of what the speed it takes to accomplish what needs to happen. You know, when you're in a structure, those are the things that do, you know, it reminds you that you're in a structure, a bigger structure or a smaller structure or not. And those are also things, mantras you could say to yourself, because I believe that your work ethic and your efficiency will prove that your point to be true when the rest catch up. And that's, you know, that sometimes is, you know, that's the plight of being a trendsetter, of being someone who can think into the future and that does have vision, you know, and those are important things to express, but as well to self-love yourself with, because that's not going to change for you, you know, and how you communicate that and how you get to a level where you do have more control. You will only have to communicate that more in a way that other people can understand. And some of that is sometimes people can't understand, and you have to make those hard decisions if they can work at this level and work in this time or not. But, you know, it's hard to, I would say, speak up to those that are taking it slower because they're very patient because, you know, there's a lot of fear associated with taking the risk. But I strongly believe it's all about the risk. If you're not risking it,
you're missing it.
You're missing it. Hey now.
Like, Sam, you work in a slightly different industry in a business whose size fits between Azul's and Danny's. So I'm kind of curious to hear you wrap up that chain of thought there.
I miss chatter.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that like we get, I mean, even if you look at this, so I kind of got to see this all happen beforehand, because before my work moved, my class moved. And because like, I really can't stress enough how much learning you lose in being remote. Remote is based on this idea that you get paid to perform an action, right? That's the whole, you know, ROW, like you can get paid to do that. In other firms, because like in my industry, there's so much about, and I've done it too, there is a lot of remote work that's done and there's independent work. And then there's your day job. And in your day job, like your proximity people, you actually hear and learn and are involved in problems that you otherwise wouldn't be involved in. And they have, some companies have done studies on how that works and why, and that, you know, why people want to do that. And that's led us here to actually making the decision, you know, the decision makers here. I'm not one of them. But I do understand where that communal aspect of this happens. But the thing that I miss the most, and the thing that I found in my class that was the hardest, was that while you're instructing, a team talks to each other, right? So like, you know, if we were sitting there in person, while the four of us are talking, everybody else in this meeting would be talking to each other at a very quiet, respectful volume. Hey, did you hear that? Did you hear this? What did you think about that? And those are all really important parts of communication. And I can't find any way to replicate it. That is my current challenge. I've gotten my bandwidth issues, I've gotten my connectivity issues, I've gotten my process issues. I have training. I'm doing another one on interactive Bluebeam because, as you had said, we dropped the tool and I expected that people would be a little more inquisitive of it, and they weren't. So I'm doing a full, hey, here's all the breadth of opportunity that this is going to do, and then I'll dive into each one further. But I even have started, I do team chats on Microsoft Teams with just anything that's going on in the project, anything. So snipping tool and Teams are my, 24 hours a day, every day. I'll wake up, I'll snip something, I'll throw it on there. I've gotten, I joke with one of the guys about how good are you at drawing boxes with the mouse now?
Yeah.
Because you use it so much, right?
Arrow here and circle this. So it's the lack of humanity in the tools.
Totally. I mean, Sam, that's
we're all struggling with.
I mean, that's what it is. That's completely what it is. And I don't think we're not gonna find that energy connection that is naturally between human beings who sit in a room with each other and brain waves connect and ideas bound. We can't replace that. There isn't a replacement. And, even in the entertainment, there is no replacement for as many. I can knock off the 30 events I've done online, plus the 3 big things that I've done and all this stuff I've done. But honestly, it is not the same kind of return after watching the premiere online that the same return of 3,000, 4,000 people give me an energy that make me feel like I did something.
Yeah, that's kind of why I like talking about this in 2 different ways, because there's the remote working conversation, but then there's the pandemic. And I think sometimes it's a mixture for sure, because we're faced with this today. But I think that when the pandemic is over and remote work becomes, more common, there are ways to kind of connect with your team and team outings and, going and doing meetings here and there. But yeah, I do agree with you, Sam. That human connection is greatly missed. I am a hugger I miss that so much.
Sure.
But some ways that I've kind of been trying to find that are, kind of coffee chats with people in the organization who I don't normally get to talk to on a project basis. We do hangouts or happy hours. And then from a work standpoint, I really try to kind of take my work on the road. That's kind of what I call it, where, it becomes exhausting, but, I try to get everybody on board with an idea so that they feel like their opinions are heard throughout the process. So when we get to the end of the project, everyone feels like, they contributed. But those are just some ways.
Yeah, those are all good. And I know we're out of time here. I don't know if any one of you has anything that you want to add as a final takeout. No, I guess we're good. Well, I really appreciate you guys sharing. It's really, wait, no, Azul, you look like you're almost ready. Say something. Were you? No?
I mean,
Okay,
I'm
we're
good. I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to say thank you, Danny and Sam, for your perspective as well. And I think a lot of it's patience, Danny, and just to knock on the head, there's be a lot of patience with everything that's going on, and as we should be allowed as well, whether we're in the position to allow other people to have that patience, or to feel it from a higher source of people telling us that we need that patience to really accomplish what we're doing, because we're in a pandemic. I think this doesn't be stated enough. Like, we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
it, working remote because I chose to.
And then I would
Yeah,
add to that communication with your team, making sure that you're leaving an open space for feedback, so that your teammates can point out any friction or issues with technology or problems along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also important from that human perspective. I mean, it's funny, as someone who sells technology and works with technology, but I relate so much with what you guys are all saying about patience and about humanism. And so I'm going to leave it at that there's a lot of great things we can do with tech. I'd love to help you all learn more about them, but I also encourage you to really, really stay in tune with the human aspect of everything. So thanks to Sam, Azul, Danny. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, but you're the best. Reach out.